Hey guys, so I'm going to do a tutorial on Navisworks TimeLiner. I want this to be as simple as possible, so I won't be diving too deep into schedules and some of the other programs such as Premiere 6, Microsoft Projects. I'm going to be using Excel for this. I want to keep the schedule incredibly simple, and I'm not. Also, we're not going to get too deep into Revit. We're just going to kind of stick to the practicals, and then with experience and stuff, you can play around with this, and then gain knowledge on what best practices suit you. So this is kind of like a hierarchy, holistic kind of hit it all, so that we can get the picks and clicks and understand that part of it, and then getting into the more in-depth stuff is going to be a lot more easier for you guys. So right now I've got a model open. It's a NWC model, so we can save this out as an NWD. Generally, that's probably the best practice. So the first thing I'll do is I'll save out a NWD of this project. So an NWD is now a file that I can share. An NWF is also a really great practice, but I directly opened it as an NWC, so I'm just going to save it as an NWD, and then I can, at a later point, I can update it if needed. But I want to do this because for this example, this will keep all our data in there, and we can save it and then share it if we need to and stuff like that. So if you just open up a blank Navis model, we can, before we do anything, the first bit we'll have to do is in Revit. So the whole idea is there's a number of products that we could use, Synchro being one of them. I can't recall some of the other sequencing 4D tools that you would use, but Navisworks isn't the best, but if it's a tool on hand and 4D simulation is something you need to do, then this is a process that could be effective for doing that, instead of going out there and purchasing an entirely separate software for that and then having to do the learning curve on it. So right now I've got a Revit model open. It's just got some walls, it's got a floor, just a slab, and then it's got a roof and a door. The gutters are on there too, but let's just hide those and ignore them, because the parameter that I'm applying doesn't apply to that. So the reason why this is important, because in Revit we can apply a parameter that can be used in Navisworks. So after we just draw some simple geometry, so some walls and stuff like this, we can come in here and we can look at, I've created a construction tab and then a little construction sequencing number. So this one has A1, this one has A2, actually all these walls do. Ceiling A3, roof is A4, doors A5. And that's kind of the sequencing ID. If anybody's familiar with construction sequencing, in the schedules usually, each item has its own ID, so that it can all be represented as something different. You can easily identify that. So that's a cool way to kind of give each element within Revit a user ID, because then we can connect the two later on and kind of have an effective, efficient workflow for doing that. Because no single product or process is going to be the same when you're constructing a building, so we can't anticipate that. But what we can do is try to anticipate the best way that they're going to use the schedules, and then give them ID numbers that we then can easily connect into Revit. So if we come up into the Manage tab, we can come over here to Project Parameters, and when we click that button, we have a little dialog box. You can see I've already created it, so I'll walk you through that, and we'll just do an add, and then we can type out construction sync oh, well, I spelled it wrong first. Sync number. And then we can come down here and we'll change the, or not that, well, yeah, we'll change this to a text, and then we'll change this to a construction, just so that we can kind of keep it organized within that browser a little bit better. We need it to be instance because though a wall, you know, maybe all the walls are going up at the same time, but maybe it's in phases or in areas. Whatever the case is, it's better to be instance, but then again, it could be project to project. So we'll come over here and we'll do check all. And now we have every element in there, so we don't have to worry about adding any, you know, parameters to anything else. We can press OK. So I'll use this one because it's spelled correctly, and we can come down here, or let's select an element. We can see now we have a construction sync number, and we can put in there, you know, whatever the item. So what's nice too is if you know I'm a construction professional and I'm getting into Revit for one reason only to do this process. I can get in here and say, hey, you know, I know that these walls are what I need to grab. I'll do that. Maybe we have scope boxes that are sectioning the different areas so that we're not grabbing other parts that would be constructed in different times. We can grab these walls, and then we can quickly come down here and apply the parameter value, and then maybe do a Control H to hide that element so we can move on to the next, you know, portions of it. So I went ahead and applied like to this. So I applied to, just so you guys have an idea, the walls have A2, so I'm gonna select all the walls real quick. So that's A2. The slab has A1, so that's the first bit. Then the walls. Then I'll have the ceiling go up. It's A3, the roof. A4, the door. A5. So this may not typically how you would build a building, but I want to keep this as simple as possible and just give you the visual idea, and then you know the picks and clicks that would get you to where you need to be. So after we look at this and see that we have all the parameters associated with it, so construction, I'm going to keep this one even though it's spelled wrong. I'm going to keep this as my primary one because I've already set up Navisworks and exported out, but you know, do the same thing here and apply some parameters to it. And then you would, you know, export out your file, export NWC. If you don't see this, you can easily just save this RVT and then open it within Revit. Just make sure, I mean, you can open it in Navisworks. Just make sure that when you unhide everything in your primary 3D view, so that you actually get everything that needs to be in the view within Navisworks, because it will open out your default 3D view that you created. So after we do that, let's close this, and we've exported out. We have it, the NWC that we then saved to an NWD, or we could have had the NWC link to an NWF. It doesn't matter either way. Just don't use the NWC as your primary thing, because generally the NWC is going to be overwritten by the authoring platform. So after we do that, we can actually click on here and come over here to properties, and we want to find that construction sync. Okay, we see that's right here. It's A2, the parameter. Okay, and it's in the element category. So close this. We actually use, so before we even open up the TimeLiner portion, we need to identify the sets, because that's the geometry and stuff. So we need to open up the find items. So I'm not entirely sure where that is up here, but if you come to view, you can just do the windows, and then you can open it up the find items right here. So you open up that, and then you come over here to the category. You apply elements to it, which is what we just saw in the properties dialog box. Again, you can find properties in here. And then we say construction sync, which is the property, the conditions, equals, and then A1. And then after we apply that, we actually come over here and say find all. So I've already ran this. I'm going to come over here and select this. Oh, another thing is I want to change. Oh yes, A1 is the slab. I was thinking it was going to grab the wall. So we see that the slab has been grabbed. Before I do anything, because this is going to affect something later, I want to come to the Home tab, or actually the Viewpoint tab, and over here in Mode, I want to change it to Shaded. Then I want to come down here to the Find toolbar again, and then I want to change this to A2, and then I'll do a Find All, and then I come over here, and then I'll say Save Search, and then I'll update that to say A2, and then I'll do that for all of them. So A3. Make sure it's spelled correctly. A3, Find All, which is going to be that ceiling in there. So Save Selection, or Save Search. A3, come back here. A4, Find All, which is the roof. You could also press this, so Save Search. A4, and then our last one, A5. Then we come down here, say Find All, right click, Save Search, A5. So maybe there's a good way to do this within API, the Navis API. I'm not sure yet. I haven't looked into it too in depth. But one nice thing is if you do apply a type of standard for your schedules, you can come into Navisworks, apply your search set to what the typical like your schedule IDs would be. So A1, A2, for an example, let's say is all the architectural elements. S1's all your structural, whatever the sequencing is. Kind of have a standard, and then you can do that. You can apply this within Navisworks, and then use your search sets that can all be saved within your Navis template, and then within Revit, the schedulers just need to apply the correct parameters to the walls, to the elements within Revit. And if they miss something, they just have to make sure that they apply the correct one. And then with search sets, it'll automatically search each time that it's open. It'll search for every element with the A1. So if we forgot a wall in the first one, we can export out. So it's not like selection sets where it works that when you select an element, it's only those elements that's selected. Search set actually looks at the properties, and then it looks for the properties and then grabs the elements that have those properties. That's why it's looking at the walls and grabbing the correct walls. So for a scheduler that's only wanting to get into Revit, they can open up Revit and apply this stuff, and then a 4D scheduler can then get in here, see that they have all the updated stuff, and as long as they have all their search sets created, then it'll already search for that. Now, one cool thing is, haven't figured this part out, is when you apply the elements down to this, then automatically doing that. So again, it's really working through all the standards and stuff that pertain to your specific workflows and processes. So the next bit is actually getting the data. So we need to get a schedule in there, because ultimately we're going to be scheduling from some sort of construction sequence. So I've got a simple little TimeLiner example, and this just has a few values in it. So I'm going to open it, and what it's going to prompt you is, because we have columns already in the Navisworks, so you're kind of matching things up. And external field name. So real quick, I want to show you the example I have. So if we ignore these, so I've got a comment that's going to be ignored, but we can see in my schedule that I created, we have the task ID, so A1 through A5. So our construction guys are keeping with the standard. We've got the type, the construct, if it's pre-construction or if it's temporary or it's demolished. We would apply that there, and it would pick it up within Navisworks. the title, which is the name. That's kind of important, just so we can know what the heck elements should be in there. We have the duration, the overall. Expected start and expected end is pretty important. There's some other values like the actual, but I'm just going to stick with expected and expected end, or expected start and end. And I've got some values in here. Navisworks will try to automatically format the values, or you can specify that within the Navisworks file if it doesn't. And I'll show you that real quick. So as you see, you can format it the same way I have here, and then you have something to work with. We can minimize that, and after you load that CSV, you can see row 1 contains heading. As you saw in my Excel file, it did automatically detect date and time. Okay, if it doesn't and something messes up, you can come down here and use specific and kind of specify it yourself. So if we look here, here's the task name. So all we do is we use these drop downs, and you can see that all those empty fields I had in there, and I deleted these. But these are the ones that I created that I care about. So I've already applied the title, which if we look at it, the title is going to be our name. So we now have a name. I have a task ID as the display ID, and I also use that over here in the synchronization ID, so that each element is looked at as its own thing. And then we also have something displayed so that we can see the actual ID of it, because that's important for when we're actually using over here these search sets and we're applying it to these scheduled elements. We want to make sure that we're pulling the elements into the schedule or the lines so that it's reading the correct stuff, and it's easy if we can see the actual task ID, so it's just really matching things up. So we have the expected start, expected end, kind of matched up with planned and planned. So this is nice because you may get a number of schedules all kind of having their own columns and fields within the format that it has, and this is a nice way to kind of match the things up, at least with the CSV. So after I press OK, I can open up TimeLiner. You can see I've already loaded one. If I come over here, I'm going to remove this one. Okay, so we have the CSV. I'm going to refresh and say all data sources. Synchronization is if we were updating a one that we've already built, and then we're going to rebuild the task hierarchy, and it's going to look at that data, and then it's going to structure it for us with all the columns that we picked. This is saying there's some things I'm missing in there because of some added fields and stuff, so we're just going to ignore that and press OK. I'm going to open the task, or the TimeLiner again. I'm going to pin it, and I'm going to unpin the search because we don't need that anymore. And then now that we've updated and it created the task hierarchy, we can come over here on the task tab within TimeLiner, and we can see it's built it out. So it did add these columns, which are not necessary. We can actually highlight those and delete those tasks. All right, so I've deleted all the tasks. I have the 4 things that we're kind of familiar with. Okay, so we have some information here with the actual start, the actual end, the plan, the status, the plan start, name, total cost, and attached. Really, the only thing we need to focus on is, because we already have the data filled in, is we need to apply the attached portion of it, which is actually the geometry. So if we come over to simulate, we can actually play. It's not going to play anything because no geometry is applied to it. So we can come over here to the TimeLiner, kind of get an idea of how this sequencing is going to play out. And if we come over here, we have our search sets. We can grab them and pull them in and apply them to the correct locations. So in this example, I kind of messed up the way I brought these in here. Not with this the search sets, but it's nice to have the information of what the actual task ID is, and we're missing that portion of it. But I think we're all right in this example. We don't need that, but it definitely gets pretty messy when you have thousands of things going on. So after we align the A1 and through A5 to the correct locations, we can actually come over here to simulate, and then we can see that there's something there. So if we press play, we can actually see it go through its process. So this is a very long foundation. We can see the walls go up. All right, so this is a good thing that we saw that, because we can get into now configuring the different visual or different ways that we want to represent it visually. So as you saw, it just kind of popped. It started with the foundation as the beginning, and then it populated some of the elements each time that portion of the schedule came up on the TimeLiner, and then it just kind of showed the next one after the next one, not giving us a good idea when it starts, when it actually finishes it. So we can configure all that within this dialog box. If you come here, we can see that we've got construct, demolish, temporary. We can ignore these two, and for now, because all our elements were construct. So come over here, we can see end appearance is model appearance. So exactly what we see here. Early appearance, nothing, nothing, nothing for any of these. Late or simulation start appearance. Alright, so in these appearances, you can apply different ones. So start, end appearance, early appearance, late appearance, simulation appearance. So a lot of this is going to be driving actually from your different settings within your simulate tab. You can see some settings over here in view, plan actual. You can play around with this. And since we don't have a lot of the information like the actual start dates and end dates, because this is an actual project, we're just going to leave this as is, and it should be fine. But say you want to add some other information into this, maybe some more a less transparent color, or some different colors. We can actually come over here to appearance definitions, press this dialog box, and it's as simple as adding. And then if you double click into the color, you can give it a different color. Let's say the green, press OK. We double click in here. Maybe, or actually let's double click here, just do a select all, copy, come back, Control V. Say we want that to be maybe a 50%, and then we give that a 50% transparency. We're going to hide on all, press OK. And if we come in here, we can see that it has added it in there. We'll remove that part. Okay, so after you've set that up, played around with it, applied some appearances, you can follow me along here and apply what you see. You can actually come over here to simulate. You can see that it starts with 0%, 0%. This top one is the overall, so everything that is contained in this. So if you remember, we have A through 5. This is the percent, and then of that certain task, this is the percent of it of that certain task. So you'll see each one, and then it'll drop off the ones that finish. So up here, if we just simply press the play button, we can see the percentages fill up, and we can see each phase show up. So green is being built, the finished part is the actual modeled element, and we can see each one going through the sequence. So we'll let this play out, and then the end of a project, we have a built building.